The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello and welcome. This is Faz Kareem speaking with Learn It, and today we're going to be covering SharePoint Online Beginner. SharePoint is a heavily used tool across various organizations for document management. And today we're going to be covering how you can access SharePoint Online from Microsoft 365. We'll also be discovering the two different styles of sites that you can create in SharePoint. One known as a team site, which integrates better with Microsoft Teams. And another one known as a communication site, which acts almost like an intranet for your organization. Once the site is created, we'll talk about the quick launch. You have site URLs that you can customize and set up to access various pages, document libraries, or even lists across SharePoint. And the quick launch bar is a customizable area to create labels, links, URLs for the site users to easily access the site contents. If you are a site owner or a user that consistently publishes, we'll talk about better ways to accessing your site contents using the gear icon in the upper right-hand side of SharePoint. Site contents will allow you to see a flat file view of all of the contents, lists, libraries, apps across the site. And then we'll get into working with our actual document library. Various features that we have within the document library that help us work with others. We can check in a file or check out a file if you need a little bit of alone time with it, leaving a little comment, creating a new version. We'll talk about how you can access the version history of a file and even customize the version history settings for your SharePoint document library. And we'll wrap up the day with our SharePoint document library content approval process that we can enable for our document libraries. And that's going to be it for SharePoint Beginner. We're going to be learning about accessing SharePoint, the two styles of sites, setting up the site for quick navigation, easy customization when there's site contents, then ultimately working with a big component of SharePoint, document libraries. Checking in and checking out, version history, content approval, all things end users typically use in SharePoint when working on files. Let's get started.
Looking to support our channel and get a great deal? Become a member today to unlock ad-free videos. That's right, your favorite courses without a single ad. Interested in a specific video? Purchase one of our ad-free courses individually. Looking for even more? Gain access to exams, certificates, and exclusive content at learnitanytime.com. More information can be found in the video description below.
I'm logged into Microsoft 365. If you're unsure about how to access Microsoft 365, your organization should provide you with the Microsoft account, and from there you can log in from office.com. I've already done that. I've already signed into my organizational account from office.com. But if I wasn't, it'd prompt me to sign in. So now that I'm logged in, I want to mention that in November of 2022, they renamed office.com to Microsoft 365. And we have access to the web-based versions of our Microsoft 365 tools directly from this page here. Outlook, Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, even the online versions of Word, Excel, PowerPoint. There's also online exclusives that I've learned not many users know about, but are paying for, like using Microsoft Forms to build polls, surveys, and quizzes. Or Microsoft Stream to record video content and share it, publish it across the organization. Or Power BI Service to upload your reports, semantic models, and create dashboards that are published across various sources. A lot of integrations and a lot of online tools are available for Microsoft 365. Some Microsoft 365 tools are available as a desktop app, online, and even mobile apps, while others are just limited to the web. Today we're going to be learning about SharePoint, and you can access all of your apps from Microsoft 365 under your app launcher. You'll find SharePoint there as well. So let me give a click on the app launcher here. And with the app launcher open, I can see a list of all the apps available for my subscription. Now, some of these apps have desktop apps. Keep in mind today we're going to be talking about SharePoint Online. SharePoint Online does not have a desktop app. Now, there is a mobile app that you can use. There's a great connection to the OneDrive desktop app that you can use. But there's no official SharePoint desktop app that you can download and install. It's SharePoint Online. I'm going to give a click on SharePoint here. This is going to take me to the SharePoint homepage. I'll be able to see all of the sites that I have access to inside of my organization. I will also be able to see what sites I followed versus sites that I have unfollowed for quick navigation. And I can even create new sites directly from there. So in order to access SharePoint Online, you have to have a Microsoft 365 organizational account. And from there, when you log into office.com, you can head over to your app launcher and select SharePoint. SharePoint is an online tool. This will open up in a secondary tab. And I'm now accessing the SharePoint homepage. I think it'd be best if you pause the video and see if you can log into your organizational account on Microsoft 365, and also check to see if you have access to SharePoint. And then log into your homepage for SharePoint. And then come back to the video. We'll start talking about what this SharePoint homepage does, how we can take advantage of specific components of it, and ultimately create our site that we want to use. I'm currently logged into SharePoint Online, and the first thing I like to point out in SharePoint is that you have access to specific sites as an end user. And these sites will all be displayed across the SharePoint homepage. But in case you ever need to search or look for files or specific content, the homepage has a search. And the scope for the search is all of SharePoint. So if there's ever a time you need to look for a file but don't remember what site it is even on, you can actually search every SharePoint site that you have access to by using the search box up top. As long as you remember a little bit of a snippet about what was in the file. The search box in the very front, the home page, will search all of SharePoint. Here it's going to show me all. I can filter for just the files, filter for just the sites, and even go into contacts, news, videos, images, and then dabble into my Power BIs as well. On the SharePoint homepage, you're going to notice that it will show you the frequent sites that you visit. Now, something that you can do with these sites that you have access to is you can follow them. So if you are constantly accessing a site, it might make sense to have this star filled in. This star allows me to follow the site. All of these sites that I have in the following section are being followed by me. And what this ultimately does is it bookmarks the site and all of the contents of the site in your navigation system. SharePoint will always show you your navigation system. Even if you're on a specific SharePoint site, a specific document library, all of the sites that you followed will be listed there. So if you want to quickly access these sites, it makes sense to follow them. And they'll be listed on the home page, the start page here. But on any page that you need to, you can access your global navigation. So, I think a good tactic when starting out with SharePoint is setting up the home page, or the start page they call it. I recommend to follow the sites you visit. And once the sites are followed, you'll end up seeing them under the My Sites icon across all of SharePoint. Now, what I want to start talking about next is the ability to create sites. Now, if you're looking at your start page and you're noticing you don't have this option, it means that your IT department has disabled it, which is a very common setup. If the create site option isn't there, it just means that IT has some special portal or request ticket that they require users to fill out, and IT ends up creating the site for you. They have restrictions on these sometimes for certain organizations, while other orgs have full access for all employees. My organization allows me to create sites, so I don't want you to be too alarmed if you're noticing you don't have that option. It's a very common setup. In the next portion of the video, I want to go ahead and create my site. There's two different site types we can pick from. I want to discuss the differences between a team site and a communication site coming up next. When deciding on creating a site, there are two site types that you can pick from. It's very important to have the site type that you want correct for the purpose that you need, because you can't switch between communication and team sites once they're created. You're going to have to delete it and then create a new one. So let's talk a little bit about the sites. A team site. There's actually URLs and articles that help you learn more about the specific site types as you're building them. I've clicked on it here. A team site is to provide a location where you and your team can work on projects and share information from anywhere on any device. So what does a team site include? It looks like it includes a group of related web pages, a default document library for files, lists for data management, and something called a web part that you can customize to meet your needs. And now it's saying, should I create a team site or a communication site? Use a team site when you want to collaborate with other members of your team or with others on a specific project. So here's the catch here. With the team site, typically all or most members can contribute content to the site, and the information is limited to only the members of the team or project and specific stakeholders. If your intention is to simply broadcast information to a broad audience, a communication site is better. With the communication site, typically only a small set of members contribute content consumed by large audiences. And then here with the team site, typically all or most members can contribute content to the site, and the information is limited to only the members of the team or project and specified stakeholders. So, in a sense, the communications site works better as an intranet. A team site works better as a collaborative area. There's also documentation on communication sites. With SharePoint and Microsoft 365, you can create a SharePoint communication site to share news, reports, statuses, and other information in a visually compelling format. Communication sites are responsive and can be viewed from anywhere on any device. And it tells us a little bit about when we should use a communication site. It's used to broadcast information out to a broad audience. So with the communication site, there's a really small set of members that actually create and add stuff to the site. But a large amount of members consume the content. I'd imagine maybe a holiday calendar for the company. Budget sheets for my sales teams. HR documents for my HR department. A PTO request portal. So, both have their place in this world. But I notice most of the time when creating sites, there's going to be a lot more team sites created, a lot more project-based sites than communication broadcasting sites. There's usually at least one of these, known as the intranet. What I want to do is I want to create a team site coming up next. This team site is going to allow me to track and stay up to date on project statuses. It's going to allow me to share team resources and co-author on content. It's going to allow the site owners and the members to publish content, and this site will also integrate with Microsoft Teams, as well as other applications. But a key thing to remember about a team site is that this one can connect to Microsoft Teams, while a communication site cannot. Now, lucky for us, the process of actually creating the sites are very similar. I'm going to go ahead and pick the team site to create, since we'll see the integrations with Microsoft 365 products better with the team site setup. When creating a site, you have the ability to choose the template for the home page. Now, when creating a site, it's going to come with a page called the home page. The home page is going to be nicely laid out to display specific content. Depending on what you're creating the site for, you might want to pick some of the templates that display the content on the home page for you. I'm going to pick the standard team template, which helps me manage projects, share content, and stay connected with my team. But you can always change the look of the template once the site is created. And in fact, you can change the site template later under settings. So this can be changed later. But there are other template styles like crisis communication team templates, employee onboarding team templates, event planning templates, and various others, and they're constantly adding more. I'm going to be going to the standard team template here. This allows me to see recent team activity, share team news, highlight team content and resources, and all it comes with is just this home page. I'm going to use this template. Here it's going to ask me for a site name It'll let you know whether or not that site name is available inside of your organization. I'll call it SharePoint Online Beginner. This is something, the site description, that folks will see when you add them to the site. I'm just going to put the date it was created. And I'll also put the owner, so that way folks know I created it. Letting me know that the group email address is available, and here it's pulling up the site address. If I ever forget the site address, there is an administration console that IT has access to that will list all the actively used sites in SharePoint, and we can always get the URL back from there. But let me go ahead and hit next here and create the site. So it's going to allow me to pick the privacy settings of the site. This can be changed later, but I'm going to pick my site as a private site. That way, as an owner, I get to control who has access to the contents that I create in the site or upload to the site. If I make it public, it just makes it public to anyone in the organization, where they can search SharePoint and join the site and see all the good stuff in the site. Most sites are private with a specific member list. Now keep in mind, only the owner can change these settings. Only the owner can add members to a private list. It's important to have at least a secondary co-owner. And actually, it says it right here. Consider assigning one additional site owner or a group to help manage this site. And it's letting us know that site owners have full control of site content, themes, permissions, hub associations, and other site settings, while site members can simply edit, view, files, pages, lists, and site navigation. I'm going to choose to add in my secondary owner here. I'm going to pick Joseph Patty for my organization. I'm going to make sure to make Joseph an owner for stepping away from this page. And before I actually add in the rest of the members, I typically do that once the site is laid out, created, and some content is already in there. So that way the members join into a useful site. So I'll be adding the rest of my members once the site is fully created, launched, set up, and deployed. A couple of finishing touches I want to mention. You are allowed to change the site template and the site settings. Under this gear icon, if you're the owner, you'll have access to change the look. Change the look will allow me to change the theme, header, and navigation style. I can also click on Apply a Site Template and pick a new site template directly from here. Under Site Information, I have the ability to change the privacy setting that we had just set, or even delete the site altogether. So, I've just created the SharePoint site. It's a team site. I get access to the standard team template homepage. Up next, I want to start talking about our site navigation and a little bit about the home page we've just created. I'm over here in the SharePoint site, and I'm accessing the home page. I can see that the site URL says that the site home page is stored under SharePoint Online Beginner, a folder called Site Pages. It's called collabhome.aspx. Now this home page allows me to search the SharePoint site for specific content that's stored on this site. Now, besides being able to search content on this site using the home page, I also get access to the site navigation. Now, the site navigation is going to show up on the left-hand side when you use a team site, but this can change. If I go over to this gear icon, I have the ability to change the look of the site. And with our communication sites, the site navigation is actually on the top. They allow us to change the settings of the navigation. So if you want, you can have it on the top as well. You see it says Home, Conversations, Documents. But a lot of folks will then believe that this is a communication site because you've made it look like one. I'm going to switch it back to vertical. I can turn off the navigation altogether as well, if I needed to. In addition to that, you also have the ability to edit the site navigation. If I were to edit the site navigation, it pulls up the edit mode. And now, if I need to, I have the ability to adjust the current site navigation by moving the links, or editing the names, or the URLs behind them, or removing them altogether. Or I can add additional ones. I can hover over in between the pre-existing ones, and this option to add a new link or a label will become available. So if I remove some of these things like the notebook, remove. The Pages library, remove, and I hit save, those will be removed for all users across the site. But if I go back and hit edit, I can have the ability to add those links or labels back to the navigation. I can add, let's say, the notebook back. This automatically adds the link to the notebook, and I can hit OK. If I need to access, let's say, the Pages library again, I can grab the link for the Pages library and paste it in here and label it whatever I please. I'm going to do that. Now, I deleted something, but I need to go access it, the Page library. Anytime I need to access stuff on the site that isn't easily visible, I can head over to this gear icon. And the gear icon is going to store something known as site contents. The site contents allows me to see all of the contents of the site without it being scattered across different pages. So here I actually can see all of the document libraries and even the site pages page library that was available there just a moment ago. So if I needed to, I can copy the URL from the site pages again. And if I want to, I can edit the home page's navigation menu with that URL that I've copied. I'll call it Pages. Now, I've seen a lot of SharePoint sites, and over time, the site navigation, the quick launch, gets rather full. I want to let everyone know that you have something known as labels that you can create. These labels will allow you to make sublinks. I'll call this one useful links. Hit OK. And I'll move the useful links all the way to the top here. And I can make all of these other links a sublink to the useful links. And when I hit save here, the useful links shows up. I can see all the useful links in this little label here that I can expand and collapse. And I have the recycle bin on the outside. If I wanted to, I can also move the recycle bin in there. However, that might be something you want more visible for the group. So, I'm going to edit this. I'm going to go ahead and promote the sublinks, making them back into standard links now that we've seen the label. And maybe next time you're working on a SharePoint document library or a SharePoint site, you can go ahead and create links for the content that you've added there. I think that's all of them. Looks like nothing is inside the useful links category there. So, I think what would be best is playing around with change the look. See if you can change the quick launch to the top. See if you can move it back to the left. Edit the quick launch. See if you can remove a link, add it back. See if you can make a label, and then see if you can make sublabels and promote them back, giving us some nice practice for our home page setup. I'm currently in the SharePoint Online beginner site's homepage. And I can see here, once the page is fully loaded, I always will see a gear icon in the upper right-hand corner near my profile here. And if I were to give a click on that, I have the ability to see something called site contents. Site contents can also typically be found inside the quick launch area, but sometimes owners or members will remove it. If you would like to see a list of all the content that is scattered across the site, it might make sense to visit Site Contents. Site Contents will allow you to create new content for the site, but here it's going to list all the document libraries, form templates, any site assets, style libraries, Power BI, and site pages that are available. I can also access the recycle bin directly from the site contents in case it went missing from this quick launch. Now that I have access to the site contents, in case I ever lose some of these URLs, I can quickly get them back by heading over to the settings of the document libraries that I've created or page libraries that I've created. And I can copy this URL and use it to access it yet again. Now, one of the main use cases for SharePoint Online is document management. It's a great tool that lets you store files where a department or a group can go and access them simultaneously together. I can actually access the document library of the site from this quick launch area. If that's not located there, I can also see a nice web part displaying a small miniature version of my document library on the home page if you haven't picked a different template. If those aren't there, you can also go over to your site contents, and the site contents will show you all the document libraries that are created inside of the site. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to access the document library. The document library is going to show me the documents that are stored across the site. Now, if you need to, you can always drag and drop files directly from your computer into the document library. it uploads it for you. If you need to, you can always create new files directly into the document library, whether it be Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Forms, Visio. I'm going to create a new Word file. This uses Word Online, which automatically saves as you type. But it will ultimately save it in that location, the SharePoint Online Beginners Shared Document Library. So, the document library will show me a list of all the files and folders that are available. If I need to, I can sit here and I can sort by the column names. I can sort by who last modified. If I need to, I can also access these different views that are created, switching my document library to a compact list. It just reduces the lines between the files, or switching it over to a tiles, a more visual layout, or accessing the filter icons and filtering by file types, or whatever filter we're looking for. So, now that we have some files in the document library, the members of the site will automatically get access to these files, where they can edit, collaborate, and co-author on them. And multiple users can access this file simultaneously. Now, this library that comes with the site has settings. And if I go over to this gear icon while inside the site library, I have the option to go over to the library settings. I can change the name, add a description, or even see some more advanced settings. From here, I have the ability to, if I need to, change the list name, description, and navigation. I can also go over to the advanced settings. And when I click on advanced settings here, I have the ability to choose various settings for the document library. Various settings. Like, how do I want the files to open? Do you want it to use Word Online, or would you like to use the browser? Or would you like to use the application on your desktop? You can change the settings for the document library. Do you want folks to be able to create new folders under the New drop-down? Do you want items from this document library to appear in searches? So, various settings that alter how the library itself interacts with the site. And as a site owner, this is something you can control. Now keep in mind, I originally got here by going over to the document library. And from the documents there, I had this gear icon selected, and I went over to my library settings, where I can see the more advanced settings there. And then under my advanced settings, I was able to see those advanced settings and choose the settings for the documents in the site. Folks, if you do decide to change something on this site, be sure to hit OK instead of hitting the back arrow, otherwise the site won't commit the change. So that's a little bit about working at the document library, the settings behind it. I want to start talking about how you can work alone on some of these files by checking in the file and checking out the file. Coming up next. Now, this document library is available for all members and owners of the site. And if you are in the file and someone decides to go in there at the same time, you'll see their name pop up as well. Now, that doesn't have to be the case. you also have this ability to check out the file. With the file selected in the documents, you have the ability to click on the ribbon, and under the ellipses, the option to check out will be available. I also have the ability to go to this ellipses in line, and under More, the option to check out is available. Checking out the file will show an icon near the file, letting us know that a user has checked out the file. Now, anyone that has access to this documents will no longer be able to edit this version of the file. It will be locked for use by the user that checked it out. And the only person that can unlock it and check it back in is the owners and the person that checked it out. So be sure if you check out a file to check it back in. You can also add in a comment once a file has been changed. This comment will show up in the version history of the file. So now that I've checked in and checked out the file, I can click on the ellipses here and go over to the version history of the file. And I can see there the second version says no change. If I go over to this gear icon and I access the library settings, under the More Library Settings, I have a settings category called Versioning Settings. When I go over to Versioning Settings, it allows me to decide how many versions of a document the library will keep. Up to 500 versions will be kept by default. You can also require checkout, to where in order to edit the file, a user needs to have it checked out. If you do decide to change some of these settings, be sure to hit OK instead of cancel. In addition to requiring checking in and checking out, you can also apply content approval. If I go over to my library settings again, under More Library Settings, I have the ability to go over to my versioning settings yet again, and I can specify whether new items or changed items should remain in a draft state until approved. This will require the owners or the approvers to approve the content before it shows up for everybody in the document library. Once adding this and heading over to the document library, you'll end up seeing a new column get created called Approved. Anytime a new file gets added into the document library, it's going to always show up in a what we call a pending state until one of the owners or the approvers decides to click on the ellipses and approve the file for the rest of the group. Now this file has become visible to all users. So a couple of major things we've discussed here. Check in and check out. Version history. And as well as content approval. All of these things have been found in the gear icon for our library settings under More Library Settings, Version History Settings. When we come back, I want to talk about how you can get this document library available on your computer's File Explorer. That way you're more familiar with the document libraries in an area that you typically search for your files. Now, something we can do with our document libraries, if we're signed in to the OneDrive desktop app, is sync. Sync is going to allow us to get the document library and have it display directly in our File Explorer. And as long as you're signed into OneDrive, you will see the synced area show up. I'm going to sync this, and it's going to open my Microsoft OneDrive. And I can see here in just a second that the SharePoint Online Beginners documents is available directly in my OneDrive. This syncing functionality has been around for quite some time. And to me, this gives us a reason to no longer even need a desktop app for SharePoint, because OneDrive will give you access to the files that you typically access on SharePoint if you need to by syncing. So now I have access to the same files on this site directly on my computer. So if I remove something here, it gets removed from my computer. If I add something here, it gets added to my computer. Syncing is a great way to have all of your files available across multiple devices consistently. All right, this was SharePoint Online Beginner. We will have another advanced one coming up. In this lesson, we learned how to access SharePoint, the differences between a team site versus a communication site, using the quick launch and the customization settings behind it, understanding what site contents is and how to utilize it, working with the document library, how to access it, change the settings behind it, use the check-in and check-out feature for your files or folders, understanding version history and how to change the settings behind it, and finally, content approval. Hello and welcome everybody. This is Faz Kareem with Learn It, and today we're going to be covering SharePoint Online Advanced. There is a beginner course before this that I highly recommend to take a look at if you're new to SharePoint. But today we're going to be covering the advanced session, which is a different set of topics that build upon our beginner session. Let's see what we're going to be covering today in SharePoint Online Advanced. Now in our beginner course, we got accustomed to building sites, understanding what a team site was, what a communication site was, and ultimately working with our documents in the library that comes with the site. I want to do a little bit deeper with the document library, and I want to show you ways that you can sort columns within the document library, filter if need be, and even search to help locate documents. We'll also talk about how you can customize the document library to build special views that have filtered items, to build special sorts that sort the data in a certain way. And these views can be available publicly or privately for your own personal use. Once we cover these two topics, focusing on the document library, I want to start shifting gears to working with the list. Microsoft has the Microsoft List app available for us, which integrates into SharePoint. Microsoft List app allows us to track data directly in the site. Once the list is set up, you can add records to the list. And we'll talk about creating the list, adding records to the list, maybe even exporting the list, and a couple of basic settings around the list. Once we get a hang of it, we've covered document libraries and lists. We're going to start accessing another component of SharePoint, which are the pages. All of these apps that we're adding, document libraries, lists, they're going to be scattered across the site. And we have to make sure that we have a page to show this content. The pages are customizable. You have different sections that you can add, different background colors, title pages. And it's a pretty flexible environment. And I want to make sure as a SharePoint site owner, you feel comfortable working with those pages. Because you're going to build all of this beautiful content, whether it's a list or a library that holds your files And you want to make sure that the users of the site have access to it. So a convenient way to do that is adding these pages, customizing the page to make it user-friendly. And the best way to customize a page is by using something called a web part. If you have a list or a document library or a news feed or web links that you want to display, the best way to do that on the page is by using your SharePoint web parts. Web parts will allow you to pick a custom view for your list or document library, special formatting, and you can display it across the various pages that you have access to. And that's going to cover the major components of SharePoint. In the beginner course, we go over building a site itself and the document library. And then now in this course, we're going to be covering lists, pages, and web parts, the other components to SharePoint. Once we cover these components, I want to spend some time talking about how we can add members to the site or add owners to the site. Because typically once the site gets built out, that's when you start introducing members to the site. And we start making it a live site where we actively work on. And typically those sites have more than one owner. Typically those sites have multiple members. And we'll talk about how we can add those once the site is created. So let's get started here with SharePoint Online Advanced. All right, I opened up the SharePoint site that we were working on in the SharePoint beginner sessions. I think what would be best is before I dive into it, I'm going to go over to this gear icon we mentioned in the beginner lessons. And what I want to do is, under the site information here, I'm just going to update the name. Let's call it SharePoint Online Advanced. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. It should update the name on this page in a moment here. And I'll continue using this site for the advanced session. Now we left off working with the documents here. Let me go over to the document library over there and give it a click. And in our beginner session, I ended up adding about 3 or 4 files, even turning on content approval and requiring checking in and checking out for the document library. Now, when you're working with the document library, we've discovered that there's a couple of built-in views that you have access to. And if I click on all documents here, I can see the views. The built-in views that I have access to are things like the list, a compact list, and even tiles. And because I have content approval turned on for this document library, the approve and reject items view, as well as the my submissions view, become available for me. Now you have the ability to actually create new views for your document libraries. You can group the data a different way, you can sort the data a different way, or even have it filtered. If you notice here on this drop-down under all documents, I see an option to create a new view. And from there, I can make the changes to the view that I create. If I need to customize anything, I can do that. And I have a choice on whether or not I want to make it a public view, where all the members of the site get to use it, or even a private view, where it's just for my own personal use. Let me create the view here. And the view that I'm going to create, I'll call it my custom view. And I'll put my initials near it, Baz Kareem. Now, when you're making this view, it gives you a choice of whether or not you want it to be private for the other members or public, available for all. It's important to note that if you decide to make this a private view, you won't be able to change it to a public view. You'd have to recreate the view altogether. So I'm going to make this a public view. And when I hit create here, it's going to take me over to the page where I can start editing. Once I go down to the drop down and choose to edit the view. So here's a new view that I just created. Custom view FK. It's a duplicate of my original view, all documents. But I have the opportunity to edit the current view that I'm in and save the changes to it. And here I get to do things like delete the current view. Now, if you're noticing you're trying to delete a view and it doesn't allow you to, it's because that view is the default. And if you assign a view a default, it's no longer going to let you delete it until you go back and assign a different view as the default. So if you're wondering why you don't have a delete option, it might be because you're looking at the default view. Yeah. I'm not going to change the name here, but I can add additional columns of information. And here, this little drop down, it's expandable and collapsible. I can select or clear the checkboxes next to each column to show or hide the specific columns in the view I want to create. And I can even change the ordering of the views. If I want a specific column to show up first, I can choose the positioning from the left and assign it to a smaller number compared to the ones on the right. So if you are turning on version history and you want to turn on the check-in comments, that's something useful for the team. Or if you're requiring version history or requiring checking in and checking out, add a column that shows who the files are checked out to. Various different columns that we can add that are built in here. Who created it? A description column, the file size columns, even a version column. Now, once you decide on the columns that you want to keep, you can go ahead and expand or collapse this area because you're done with it for the view. The next option that you have for your view that you want to create is deciding on whether or not you want to sort. And here it says I can select up to 2 columns to determine the order in which the items in the view are displayed. And there's a hyperlink to learn more about sorting items from there. So by default, the view doesn't have any sort going on. It's not sorted by any columns. But I can. There's different settings that I can sort it by. I'll go ahead and do it based off the name. You can do multiple level sorting, but I'll just do it in name and ascending order. And of course, you can collapse this little sort once you're done filling it out. And here I can create a filter for my custom view. Show all of the items in this view, or I can display a subset of the items using filters. Now here's the cool thing I want to read to everybody. To filter a column based off the current date or the current user of the site, you can type in brackets today or brackets me as the column value. And what we can do is then we can filter the lists based off files that were added maybe just today or modified today, or files that were only added by me or created by me or modified by me. Right now, this view is showing all items in the view. I can choose to show a specific one. I'm going to do if it's created by is equal to, and I'll put me. So it's going to be for any user here that signs in. They're going to see all the documents that they have added to the library. And I can go ahead and collapse this filter when I'm done. So, custom views allow you to build columns, and add additional columns. You can sort the data in the columns, even filter the data in the columns. And I also have the ability to choose if I want tabular view, where I can show individual checkboxes for each row, which I currently have on. If I go over to the group by, I can group the columns or the data based off a specific column. I'm going to group the data based off maybe who it was created by. And there will be a top label grouping all the files with a username. So whatever the usernames are in the organization. I'm going to collapse the group by area. I can choose if I want totals to be displayed for the approval status, the check-in comment, the checkout comment, and various other columns that are available. It might make sense to add an account to see how many comments are available, how many times a file has been checked out. I can also choose different styles for the list, and we can browse through the various styles to see how they look, but I'm using the default style at the current moment, which is the default when you create a view. Now, something that might be useful for us is the fact that a folder can be hidden or shown in a view. Now, this doesn't hide the items inside of the folder. It will show you all of the documents with no folders. It's very interesting. A folder is metadata in SharePoint. So if you were to not show the folder, it's just going to show all the files, a flat view, which can be extremely helpful for some document libraries that are much more broad with the files and the folder structure that they've created. I can use an item limit to limit the amount of data that is returned in a view. So right now, the default is 30. And then, of course, I have the ability to adjust my mobile settings. How do I want it to show up in a mobile view? Now, it's very important that once you change all of these settings and you're happy with the settings you've changed, that you make sure to hit OK instead of backing out of the page or closing out the page before committing the changes. I'm going to hit OK here. And this is a custom view that I created that has the data grouped by the users that created the files. Looks like it was just me. I've added in the created by column. I've added in the check-in comment and the checkout to column. So if I were to check out a file, it'd display the name of who it's checked out to. I can see the filter for just files that I have added are available here. So this custom view now is available for all users. Whenever they go to the document library, it's going to default to all documents. All documents at the current moment, if I hit Edit Current View, this is the one that's assigned as the default. This view appears by default when visitors follow a link to the document library. If you want to delete this view, first make another view the default. Notice how there's no delete option up here. Let me hit OK. So if I go back over to the custom view FK, I can go over and make this view. If I hit Edit Current View, I can make this the default view. And when I hit OK there, next time I go to it, it's no longer going to have the delete option. So all users will go and see this view as the very first view. And now when I go over to Edit Current View again, notice how the option to delete this view is no longer available. So it's very important to know that the default view can't be deleted. I'm going to go back to all documents, and I'm going to assign this as the current view as the default view. That way I can have the ability to delete custom view FK if I need to. As you can see, there's been a lot of clicks in this drop down here when creating custom views. Before moving on to a SharePoint list, I think it's best if you spend some time seeing if you can create a view. Once that view gets created, edit the view. And see if you can set the view as the default. And come right back. We'll be talking about SharePoint lists coming up next. Now, the document library that we've been working in, this allows me to upload and add files. There's another component of SharePoint called a list. And I can add a list to the site to display content that isn't a file, but that lives on the site. So text-based content that you would maybe type into an input that gets stored on the site. Records, we'll call them. If I go over to this gear icon for the site itself, I have access to the site contents here as the owner, and I'll be able to add the SharePoint list from here. I'm going to go over to site contents to take a look at what I currently have in the site. Now, with the site, I can see there's already some built-in stuff like the document library is included, an area for form templates, site assets. If I ever upload a photo or something, all the assets to the site get stored here. The style library, the Power BI app, and then the site pages that we'll work with later. I have the option to add in new apps. I can create a new document library with different views, different files, different permissions, different settings. But I can also create a list, which I don't have a single list currently in the site. I can build a list for my contacts, displaying an image, a contact name, their department, their phone number, their extension, who they report to. I can build a calendar as a list, putting all my holidays, all my events, my training events that are coming up potentially for an organization. Ultimately, a list is simply columns where you would create and add data to. But depending on what you're creating the list for, you have different views. Like if I want to show a Meet the Teams page as contacts, it might be best to use a gallery. If I want to show a calendar, it might be best to build a view that displays your content as a calendar in the list, which simply needs a column that holds dates for that to be possible. I'm going to build a list for, let's do a Meet the Teams page. That'd be cool. Now, when you're working with Microsoft Lists, this is actually a standalone app that Microsoft has to offer. It integrates very smoothly into SharePoint. Now, I have the ability to use this app, and I can create a blank list where I choose the columns, I input the records, change all the settings myself. If I've already been using the Lists app, just not in SharePoint, I can use the list that I've already created. A lot of times when you're starting up with lists, You also have the opportunity to use Excel files, which some of the data like contacts, events, they're already in Excel. Now just be sure that if you are using an Excel file, that it has to be formatted as a table. And of course, if you have a comma-separated values file, a CSV, those are also available for you. Microsoft has also done a pretty good job at adding list templates. These list templates simply have columns pre-created for you, like a template that helps you track issues, a template that will help you with employee onboarding or event and itineraries, asset managers, travel requests, work progress trackers, content schedulers. Now, if you're unsure about how these lists would look, you can actually click on the templates to see a preview of them. Now, the template will show you the list with pre-populated data. That pre-populated data won't be there once the list is created when you choose to use the template. So this list has features to track issues and bring them to closure in this list. It comes with pre-populated and design choice pills for priority and the status columns. It's grouped the views by priority, status, and the person the issue is assigned to. This makes the list easy to parse through, issue data efficiently. So it's designed with those things already built in, as opposed to doing it from scratch. And there's various other templates that you can pick from. Let's see this expense tracker one. Record all your expenses in one place. Pre-populated design choice pills for the category column. So it comes with the date, the amount, and this pre-populated category column. Of course, you can edit these if you're not happy with the labelings and the categories that were created. Add additional columns if you need to. Oh, they have an image column for the receipt as well. How cool is that? So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick a blank list. And I get to add a list name. I'm going to call this one Contacts. And in the description here, a list of our contacts. This will be formatted as a gallery to display our contacts nicely. And I'm going to make sure that this contacts list is going to show up in our site navigation. So without me needing to add it at the end and hit edit, I'm just going to leave this check marked on. Let me create it. All right, I can see I have the contacts list newly created there. Now this list is a blank list, so let me customize it a little bit, like the title column. I'm going to go over to the column settings for it, and let me just rename this one here. I'll call this one full name. I get to add additional columns. Let me add another one here, and then I get choices for what type of column I want to create. So I have the full name there. Let's maybe do job role for the next one. I'll do text. And I'll do job role. Enter user's job title. Here. And I'll leave it as a single line of text. I can leave a default value if it's left blank. I can even require that this is a column that needs to be filled out for every record. I'm going to save this column as job role. I'll add in another column here. And this next column, I'm going to do departments. And let's say we want to make sure that users spell our departments correctly or have our organization department names nicely lined up there. We have this ability to create choice columns. We can offer a set of choices they can pick from. I'm thinking of like data validation from Excel. I'll put department. Choose from the pills to select a department the contact is located in. And I'll leave it as a choice. That's our type. This is what gives me the option to create the column's choices. Choice number 1, I'll put IT. I'll add in another one, HR. I'll put sales. I'll put marketing. And of course, I'll leave it at these ones here. But if I needed to add additional choices, I can do that. I can also add in different colors. And I can leave the choice of adding in manual values as well, which I'm not going to do. I want this to be consistent with the departments that we have aligned here. I'm going to hit save for this column. And I'm going to add another column here. I'm going to go over to this date and time column. Notice how there's no option for just a date column. Once you choose the date and time column, you can just choose to not include the time. So notice how it says include time, no. So I'll call this one date of hire. And I'll hit save. I'm going to add in another column here, just creating my list. And I'm going to build a yes/no column. And I'm going to do full-time or part-time. And I can choose yes/no as the type. For the default value, I can choose the default value to assign. I'll put yes, since the majority of us are full-time here, and hit save. And I'll add in another column here. At the very bottom, we should have a choice for images here, where I could input an image for the item as well. So, I have actually created a list. These are not document libraries like we were working with previously. We have a full-on list where we can add records to. Now, the list has various columns, like the full name column that I've added, the job role column, the department column, the date of hire column, full-time, part-time, headshot, and if I need additional columns, I can do that. I don't have any records in the list yet. I can add them by going to this form and filling it out or editing in the grid view. If I need to, I can export the list into Excel or to a CSV file or to Power BI. I can also sit here and filter the list using the little funnel icon. Once the records are added, it'd make more sense to filter. Since there's nothing there, I can't really filter for much. And I have various different views that we went through in our previous lesson for our document libraries. We'll be building a gallery view as well as a contacts, maybe calendar view as well, to see how we can kind of adjust those views. So I think it's best if you are following along and you have the ability to create lists from the site contents, I think it'd be best if you were to build a list for yourself. I can see mine's there, the contacts list. And this list is going to be used across the site when we add it to pages and create web parts that display the content. But for right now, I think it's best if you pause the video and see if you can build the contacts list. Feel free to add additional columns or exclude columns that you don't find fitting for your contacts. But once you've created it, come back and we'll talk about adding records to our list. So I have this list created, and it's about time where I get to start adding records. The records are the content that goes in the list, filling out the columns. Let me add myself here as an item. And notice how this view allows me to fill out a form with the columns of information I've created. So I'll put my name in here, Faz Kareem. I'll put desktop instructor. I'll put my department as IT. A date of hire, when was that? I'm just going to pick a date. 2/02/1995. That's what we're going to put there. I'll leave as a full-time. And I'm going to select an image from my computer here. Let's see if I should have one available. And I'll hit save. I can also add in records a different way. Now I'm going to add in the record twice. I'm going to hit edit in grid view. Notice how this option to add a new item shows up in grid view. And notice how it becomes very tabular now, where I have these cells that I can edit things with. So the grid view is just quick for mass uploads. So if I needed to add in some multiple contacts, I can do that very easily here. I'll add in Joe Patty, who's also a desktop instructor. And Joe Patty's also in IT. So notice how I'm just typing this and selecting it. For the date of hire, I'll go ahead and pick a date. And full-time employee, check mark yes. And here I get to add in images as well. I don't have an image for Joseph. I'll go ahead and use the Learn It logo for this one here. And when I exit in grid view, it added yet another record. Oh, looks like I didn't put the name in there. Let me edit that one more time. Joe Patty. Now, I'm going to exit the grid view. And the cool thing is this content lives on the site. You can sort, filter, create views with it, which we're going to do in a second. But I can also generate Excel sheets as well as CSV files directly from here with the information in the list. So if any higher ups are requesting this information, you can always get the most up-to-date version and export it fairly quickly. Ultimately making it like one source of truth for everything. Now, the contacts have different views. I have a list view. I have the compact list view, makes it smaller. I have the auto fit height. And then I have this ability to create new views, format views. Now, I'm going to add in a new view here. I don't like getting the views that I have currently. I don't want to mess around with the originals. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new view. And for this view, I'm going to call it the gallery FK. And I'm going to select to change this view from a list to a gallery. And I'm going to make this a public view and create. This is the gallery view here. The gallery view is going to display the contacts as a gallery. Great when you have an image available. I can also choose to edit the current view that I'm in. So my gallery view can be made the default view for the list. I can choose what columns are going to be shown versus which ones aren't going to be shown. Let me hit OK here. Now, I also have the ability. Oh, 1 second. Let me refresh this page. There we go. All items, gallery FK. I'm going to add in another view to display the calendar. Now, for the calendar view, I'm going to create a new list. I'm going to build maybe holiday calendar. And when I go back over to the site contents here, there's my list with 2 records. I'm going to add in a new one for my calendar. I'll make it a blank list, and I'll call it calendar. And I will create it. And I'll keep it very short for the column creation process. I'm just going to call this one event name for the title. And for this next one here, I'm going to put a date, the start date. And I'll add in 1 extra column for the end date. And I'll add in 1 record. I'll call it a company holiday. And I'll put the start date for 26th. Oh, didn't mean to click that there. And I'll hit save. Now this view would be great to be displayed as a calendar. So I'm going to add in a view for my calendar this time. I'll call it calendar FK. I'm going to display the calendar as a month, and I'm going to choose the start date as the calendar for the start date column, and the end date of the calendar as the end date column and hit create. And here I can see my company holiday there. Now this calendar view is not the default, but I can always hit edit current view. And this will allow me to change any of the settings that I need, like changing it to week, to work week, to day, displaying what subheading you want available. I'll hit save. I'm going to assign this view, the day view, as the current view, and that will mark it as the default view for the list. So, we have added records to both lists, and we've applied a special view to both lists. This one's a calendar view, and this one's a gallery view, nicely displaying the content for the end users on the site. Pause the video and see if you can create a calendar with a new list. Go ahead and add a date column. I've added two, a start date and an end date. And see if you can edit the views to create a calendar like we have on the screen here. When we come back, we'll start learning about SharePoint Pages and how we can customize various pages to hold content across the page. I am going to head over to the home page of my site. And when I'm looking at the home page, I can see that the URL is going to say the site name that it was originally called, but then it says collabhome.aspx. This page is an ASPX file. You can access this page and customize it from the site contents. If I go over to this document library called Site Pages, I'm going to click on this here. I can see that the collaboration home ASPX file is available. When I click on this, this is going to take me back to that home page. Now, the home page is the first page that you get taken to on a SharePoint site. It typically has the site navigation with all your useful links, and it has these various web parts. Now, keep in mind, in the beginner course, when we were creating the site, we kept learning about different templates that we can pick from. And we picked the very first template, the Collab Home template. So if I go over to Apply a Site Template, these are different pages that you can add to the page library. I'll add in employee onboarding, or I'll do event planning. This adds a home page, 2 additional pages, 1 list, 2 page templates. I can also add in a different one like crisis communication teams. This adds in 1 home page, 1 additional page, and 1 page template, and 2 lists. So you're more than welcome if you find some of these pages, templates, these site templates fitting for your need. It will save a lot of the work for you. That way you don't have to reinvent the page, build out the sections and the formatting and the color schemes. All that will be nicely done for you. You just got to choose what content goes where on the page. Now, if you don't want to pick from the templates, or if you want to just start from a blank page so that way you can have your own creative process flow, you can add blank pages to the page library as well. I'm going to go over to my site contents again. Now with our site contents, I have access to a view that shows me everything that's available on the site. And I'm going to head over to the page library this time where I can see site pages. I'm going to create a new page. Wiki pages are a little outdated. They still exist because there's a lot of legacy sites that organizations still use that still require the concept for the site to work. But I wouldn't really recommend using a wiki page in this day and age. Also with the web part page, those are fairly old at this point. It was the next evolution to a wiki page. They're still available so that legacy sites in SharePoint can perform correctly and operate correctly. The ones that were already existing, so they don't break. The most modern site page that we can use are called site pages. They have the most contextual features, making it easy for us to build the page. And these ones work with the most modern SharePoint Online sites that we have to offer in this day and age. I'm going to go over to the site pages here, and I'm going to pick from the page that I can create. Awesome. So here is a page. It automatically saves as you type. I'm going to call this one custom page, and I'll put FK. Here, I'll hit save as draft just for a second here. This is how the page looks when you're out of editing mode. And let me go back over to site contents to show everyone something here. Now there's a third item in there. The custom page FK. At the current moment, it's not even published yet. When I go back to it, I can continue editing it. So I'm going to go back to the edit option here. Now, the very top of the page is a title. And there's different formats for the title that you can pick from. The layouts. You can pick image and title, but you can also go over to plain. From plain, you can change it to a color block. And you can format the color block as well. As opposed to a color block, you can also use overlap. I'm going to use a plain one. That way I don't have to worry about adding an image. I can always edit this if I need to. I can also choose whether or not I want comments to be available on the page. So if I save this here, there will be a comment section where users can actually publish a comment about the page and we can all read the comments. Think about like a YouTube video. There's comments at the bottom of it for us. If I hit edit here, I can turn that option off so it won't be available on the page when it's published. There's no more comment section. When I go back over to edit, I get to see that the page on the corner here has this plus sign. Besides the title, you get the ability to add something called sections. And when I go over here to add sections, there's different sections that I can create, like a 1-column section, 2-column sections, or 3-column sections, or 1/3 to the left, 1/3 to the right, or even vertical sections. There's different templates I can pick from for my sections that I can create. But the section controls the layout of the content. How you want your list to be displayed. Do you want it to be in 1 column or 2 columns? For my first section here, I'll pick it as a 1-column section. If you don't like the section you've created, you can always delete it. You can go back and add an additional column. Maybe this one you wanted 2 columns. Notice how there's a dashed line here, and the option to add 2 pieces of content show up for this section. If I change that to 3, now I get 3. When I hover over here, I get 3 options showing up. These sections have shading, where I can change the shade of the section. And I can even make it a expandable and collapsible section. So I can give it a section name. I'll make it back to 1 column, and I'll call it a 1-column section as the name. And I get to add additional sections. I'm going to add in another section here. This one's going to be 2 columns. And I'll change the background color to this one slightly different, and I'll make it a collapsible section. And I'll call it a 2-column section. And I'm going to go down to the third one here. Make it 3 columns. Make this section collapsible and change the shading to it. And I'll call this one 3-column section. Now, you can always move the order of the sections. Like if you want the 3 to be on top, you can just drag it. If I want the 2 to be down below, I can select it and I can move the section. Oh, let me move that right where I wanted it, right there. 3, 2, 1. I'm going to change it back over here. Select section 1, move it back to the top. I'm going to select section 2. Oh, 1 second. Let me do that correctly there. Go back to the top for section 1. There we go. 1, 2, 3. And let's see how this looks. I'm going to hit Save as Draft. Oh, at the current moment, it doesn't show the sections because I don't have any web parts. But when I go back to edit here, I can see this column sections. I think it'd be best if you spend some time working on the page. See if you can add in a title. If you want to add an image, choose one of the image and title options. And add in these multiple sections, whether it's 1 column, 2 columns, or 3 columns, and format these sections to your liking. In the next portion, we're going to talk about how we can add content from the site, like an app, a document library, and display it across the page here, using something called a SharePoint web part. So pause the video, and when we come back, we'll start adding those web parts to our page. So now that we have the sections created, I think what would be best is understanding what a web part is. We have the site itself. The site has document libraries and lists and special views. Now we have to display that list, that document library, special apps that we want access to across the page. We can do that by adding a web part. Now, once you create the columns and the sections, you're going to notice that when you hover over the sections, this little contextual plus sign shows up on the columns you've created. Now from here, you can add web parts. I'm going to add in a web part here for my 1 column section, and I'm going to click on the plus sign. Various web parts you can add. Let's just talk about some basic ones. Like if you just wanted to add some text, there's a web part for that. This web part allows me to use text editing tools in a text box. It's great when you need to share some text-based information about maybe something on the site or this page that you're directing them to. Now, this is a one-column section, so I have to go down below this web part to talk about another one. I'm going to add it to the same section. I also have an option to add in quick links. So if there's special links that you want users to access, you can do that by adding a web part for quick links. Now, this quick links web part has different layout options, similar to my title web part. The default one is compact, but I can also have the quick links show up as a film strip or a grid or a list. It appears I've skipped one. The buttons. And the tiles. And from here, you get to go ahead and add the links that you want to show up on this list. I'll do it from a link here. Now you have to include https:// on the links that you provide. It needs to make sure it's directing you to a secure link. I'm going to hit add here. All right, and I can see that the first link that I created showed up there. I can choose custom images for the link. Here, I'll change the title here. And I'll do a custom image. And I'll upload an image of the Learn It logo there. Excellent, excellent. There's my Learn It website. And I'll add in some accessibility text. A link to the Learn It website. All right. So, I can add additional links if I need to this web part. It doesn't have to just be one. Here, I add a link to the custom page. That would link to this page if they click on it, which would take them directly to the top of the page again. So, let's see a different web part now. So there's quick links, the text box. I also have one called divider. Divider is truly what it says is. It just puts a little divider in between. So if I wanted to add a divider in between my web parts, I can add the divider web part. Just a little divider. I'm going to go down over to the 2-column section. For the 2-column section, what I want to do is I'm going to add in the document library I created. I can display the documents. You might have to search. I'll pick the documents here. And then from there, you can specify what view you want to display here. So that custom view I created for the document library can be shown on this web part. And then in this next column here, I'll add in the document library again. But I'll do the site pages library. Let's just see how this looks when I hit save as draft. Here's my one column section that's now visible because I have some web parts. Here's my two column section that's now visible because I have some web parts. Let me go ahead and edit this to add in my third column with my lists that I created. The list app. I created a calendar at one point. In the list app, I created a contacts at one point. But I can also go and add the list app again. I can add it twice, like for the contacts. But this time, maybe I want it to show up as a list. Like this view, I want it to show up as a list instead. All right, let's see how this looks now. We have our one column, our two column section, and our three column section. Now, when you're happy with the customizations you've made, you can make this page public for everybody and publish it. This will make it visible to everyone that accesses the site, and you can even put a hyperlink to it directly in the site navigation. I'm going to publish this now. I'll add the page to the navigation there. The cool thing is under site content now, you've created a new custom page in the site pages. And if I need to, I can also click on the ellipses here and I can make this page the home page instead. So sometimes when we have custom needs for the SharePoint homepage, we create blank pages and assign them as the home page. Try adding in some web parts to the page that you've added and ultimately publish it. Just take it section by section, web part by web part, and edit by edit. In this page, I currently have a section that has a text web part, quick links, document libraries, and then I have lists. Our site is looking good. We've added in some documents, customized the library, created multiple lists, ultimately added that page that has the web parts that displays the content. It reaches a point where you have to start adding the members now. SharePoint's great with permissions. If you go over to the gear icon, you get the option to access the site permissions from there. From there, you get to add members as an owner. You get to choose if you want a site owner, which has full control. You can control the site content, adjust the theme, the permission settings, the site settings, and even associate the site to a hub. I can make them a site member, which can edit and view site contents. Or I can add them as a site visitor, which gives them absolutely no control of the content in the site. I can change how the members share in the site. And there's even advanced permission settings that I can adjust from here. So there are 3 user groups that are currently created in the site by default: members, owners, and visitors. Edit and full control and read are assigned for these member groups. You can always create additional groups, and this group will be available throughout the entire site. What I can do is I'm going to call this one my custom group FK. I can choose who the owners of the group would be, who can view the group memberships, who can edit the group memberships, allow if the owners can join or leave this group, And then here I can assign the permissions for any additional groups I want to create. Like if I want to have a contribute group, a restricted view group, or an edit group, or a design group. These ones are approvers. So if I have a document library with approve and reject turned on, I can build a design view and add a few users to that document library's view. Now this site will allow me to add designers that can approve, customize, edit, view, and do everything below: edit, contribute, read, restricted view. So here's my custom group with just one member in it. And now I have my fourth group created. So I'm going to go back over to my site permissions here. And when I go over to the advanced permission settings, I can see that custom group FK is available. I can also go to document libraries if I need to. And when I go to the gear icon, I can go over to the library settings. And under more library settings, I can change the permissions for just the document library. So right now, this is telling me that this inherits permissions from the parent, the site. I can have this document library only inherit permissions on its own. Or not really inherit, just have permissions, unique permissions from the site itself on its own. I'm going to hit stop inheriting permissions here. And now this document library has unique permissions that's separate from the site. So if I wanted to remove some of these users or add some users to this group, it'd be different than the site. I'm going to go ahead and delete the unique permissions, resyncing the document library permissions with the site collection permissions. So SharePoint is very customizable in a sense that you can create custom user groups. You can get the document libraries or lists and assign the user groups to them with unique permissions. And that way you can control who has access to what across the site. I think what would be best is if you can pause the video and see if you have the ability to create some site permissions. See if you can go to your advanced permission settings and create a new user group. Assign the permission levels that you would like for the group and add the members. And then when you go over to your document library or list, see if you can go over to the library settings. And under more library settings, you have the ability to change the permissions for the document library. And then you can go ahead and stop inheriting permissions and give unique permissions for itself. All right, and that concludes SharePoint Online Advanced. My name is Faz Kareem, and I'm with LearnIt. In this session, we spent some time using the sort, filter, and search tools to help us be more efficient when locating documents across SharePoint sites. We learned about custom user views for the documents and lists that you can create and assign. Ultimately, we played around with the list for our calendars and our contacts, and we displayed that information by creating a special page, a custom page, that had multiple web parts. And this content was restricted using members and owners and unique permissions across the document libraries, lists, and the site itself.